Welcome to the Change Creator Podcast, where entrepreneurs come to learn how to live their truth, get rich, and make a massive difference in the world. I'm your host, Adam Forrest, co-founder at Change Creator and co-creator of the Captivate Method. Each week, we talk to experts about leadership, digital marketing, and sales strategies that you can implement in your business and life to go big. Visit us at changecreator.com/go big to grab awesome resources that will help drive your business forward. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Change Creator Podcast. This is your host, Adam Forrest. Excited that you're here today. We have a real treat for you. We're going to be digging into how we grow our Facebook groups, but also so much more in a conversation with Christina Jandali. She is a multi-seven-figure entrepreneur. She's been through it all, folks. Okay, so we got a ton of experience of her whole growth process of how she got there. We're going to talk about that stuff, and we're going to talk about Facebook groups because this is a really popular and growing area where you can build intimate relationships, right? So, we're all about branding and storytelling and all these things here at Change Creator because we want you to win the hearts of your audience. And part of that process is how we're communicating our message. Like, how do we communicate and build relationships? We don't need 1 million people following us. We just need some really good, loyal customers. And that can be a small number of reoccurring buyers. And that makes our businesses successful. So we're going to dig into a lot of this stuff with Christina today. Now, if you missed the last episode, so Bernard Schroeder, he is a branding legend. So excited to had the chance to talk with him, and we get into all kinds of stuff. He's the guy that launched Amazon, Yahoo, Pura Vida, so many big brands. I mean, and now they're iconic, right? But back then, he had no idea. He didn't even know. He said, he had no idea what Yahoo was. He didn't know what Amazon was, and all that kind of stuff. It was just all fresh. They built those brands, right? So tons of good insights and conversation and takeaways there for you guys in that episode. So go back, check it out. So one of the other things is we have our June opportunity open. So for our brand studio, this is a new initiative, a new division of the company. We have been building brands for years and helping people convert more sales on their websites and get those clear paths to purchase and things like that. And so if you are looking for help and you want to build a powerful brand that people can fall in love with and be memorable, but also start selling more on your website, good user experience, clear path to purchase, reach out to us, book a call. So we have our brand studio. You go to changecreator.com, you'll see our services there, and you can just book a call. There's some more information obviously on the page about it and on some of our portfolio shots and things like that. But, no trickery here. We get on the call. The purpose of the call is to have a strategic discussion where I will personally talk with you to diagnose your business. I want to ask you questions and just find out, are we a good fit to work together? We only take 4 people per month. So June is open at this point. We got a few calls lined up. We got things, they go quick, all right? But we're very selective because we only work with 4 people. And that's because we want to give full attention, all right? And we want to make sure we give you everything you need. We work with you closely. We give you strategic insights, coaching, how to really create this process that works for you. Now, the important part of it is you want to have an established product, at least a proof of concept, meaning you have sold something, service, a e-commerce product, whatever it is. And if you have that proof of concept, at least, then we're ready to use branding and good website design to accelerate your sales. But if you haven't gotten a proof of concept and you just have an idea, you haven't sold anything, then that should be your focus. Start selling. We shouldn't be focusing on website design and branding and all these things just yet. So we want to make sure you're taking the right steps at the right time, okay? So guys, you can either go to changecreator.com, find our services, or just go to studio.changecreator.com and you'll go to our brand studio and we can have a conversation, see if we're a good fit. By the end of that chat, we'll have a sense to make a decision, like should we move forward together or not? And that's what it's all about, okay? So we want to connect with you guys and help you using our abilities in that space, okay? All right, let's dive into this conversation with Christina and see what she has to say.
Okay, show me the heat.
I know you're going to dig this.
Hey, Christina, welcome to the Change Creator Podcast. How you doing today?
I am great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. I'm glad to connect and have discovered the work that you're doing. You have a very lively website. It has a good vibe. So it looks like you've done a lot of great things. So I'm excited to dive in. I know there's a lot of people in our audience who are trying to figure out the coaching world and a lot of the things that you're already have paved your path with. So we'll dive into those things. But before we do, let's just maybe get into a little background. I like to know like what's going on like now, like what's going on in your world these days? And then how do we get there? Like, what's the background?
Yeah. So today I have the opportunity of running a multi-seven-figure online education coaching company, helping online entrepreneurs grow and scale, and more specifically, using Facebook groups to be building their audience and be converting their leads into buyers. That's kind of a little bit about where I am today. And I know often it's like, well, how did you ever get involved in Facebook groups and why is that became the thing? And so for me, it actually kind of stemmed out of frustration a bit in the sense of things were not working and there's got to be a better way. And why were things happening so slow? Well, it seemed like everyone else online was having the most success imaginable. And here I was kind of plugging away slowly, bringing in a trickle and thinking that there's got to be a better way. And so it was through that, to things failing and not working, that I realized that I was really missing that connection with my people, which had me start my first Facebook group. And then I had a massive financial breakthrough in that first month and really knew that I was on to something.
First month. Okay. That's interesting. Let's back into that a little bit. So you said multi-seven figures now. So that gives us a good sense of where you're at. And, I think we all can feel the pain of a slow roll and, trying things and them not working, or we think they're not working and we don't have the patience to wait and we start doing other things. Like I love Malcolm Gladwell's tipping point because it reminds you stick with it. So tell me a little bit about the earlier days, because I think there's a lot of relatable insight here for people listening. Just to tell me how you were feeling when it was really slow and what were some of the steps that you started taking to that you felt kind of like broke the cycle, started giving you hope,
Yeah. So for me, in the beginning, it's like, I think it's the getting started part that's even part of the challenge in the beginning. It's just like starting with that idea. And for me, I remember it was when my daughter was born and I was working in a corporate career and I had a successful corporate career, but I knew that I was not wanting to ship her off to daycare and not be around for her as she was growing up. And I also really wanted her to create a life that she was fired up about. And I realized that even though I had all the boxes checked in my life, I had the husband, the new baby, the house, money in the bank, there was still that piece of me that felt like it was missing something. And so I, made a commitment that I knew that kids are going to learn so much more from what we do, not what we say. So I made a commitment to her that I was going to pave the way, but it wasn't actually until my son was born that I actually had the courage to get started. And I think that there's so many things that go in our minds, like, what should I do? And who can I help? And can I really do this? And geez, that's not very safe and it's not very secure. And there's so much unknown. And especially after building up a career in a totally different aspect, it's like, well, am I ready yet? Can I do this? And so I think that period of time was probably some of the most challenging because there was just so much you had to work through in your own beliefs to be able to hit go and get started. And then once I got started, I got a client here and there. But I remember I would get dressed up and I go to networking events in Vancouver. I live in Canada, and I would go into the city. And so it's probably about a 40 minute drive for me, depending on traffic. And I would get dressed up. I would have to leave my babies. And then I would go to these networking events and I'd get these business cards and I'd, grab one of them and I'd come in and I'd enter them one by one, a couple each time into my autoresponder. Like, this is not going to work so well. This is going to take a long time. And it was really humbling coming from a career where I'd established myself to somewhere where no one knew who I was. And I was starting from ground zero and had to kind of prove myself, so to speak, and develop some sort of authority when I didn't really believe that I was one to begin with. And even though I started getting a client here and there, it was nothing really consistent. And I really remember just taking an honest look at, I had two sheets of paper in front of me. I had one that was been my goals that I was going to set and how many programs I was going to sell at whatever price. So this is what I'm going to do. This is my plan. And on the other sheet of paper was my actual numbers that I generated in the business. And they were nowhere near being the same.
Yeah.
And I knew it, but I hadn't really had the courage to really look at it and like, okay, let's be real here. There's a problem. Like there's a breakdown. This is not working. And I remember just thinking like, maybe this isn't for me. Maybe I should go back to having a job. Like, what is it? And I knew that wasn't a possibility, that my reason for why was so much more important than that. And I decided to look back saying like, well, how did I create success before in my corporate world? Like, why was that not transferring over? Why was I failing so bad when it came to business? And I realized that one of my mentors had once told me when we were sitting down for lunch, and I said to her, like, what's the key to success? Like, you've been doing this a long time. She was near retiring. She'd been in the financial industry, which is where my background was from. And she said, Christina, like, I can tell you what this is. And meanwhile, I'm like, oh, okay, this is going to be so good. I'm like, yeah, I'm on the edge of my seat. Like, you're going to give me the goods. And she says to me, Christina, the key to success is building relationships. And I was like, that's not what I was hoping to hear, but I sat with it. And I remember in that moment where I was in that, in that funk of realizing, how do I get out? I went back to that conversation. I thought, well, how am I actually really cultivating and building relationships with people right now? And I'm not. And so how can I do that online? I don't want to be going in person. I want to have freedom. I want to have time. That was the whole reason for starting this. I don't want to be, strapped to a desk all day and strapped to a computer. And I realized, well, how can I do this online in a more leveraged way? And that's when I realized I could start a community and start a Facebook group and bring my people in and be able to connect with them and see who's on the other side. Because if you send an email, you don't I don't know, who's on the other side? Do we know them? You don't really have that relationship with it. You don't, it's like, feels like it's one-sided.
Yeah.
And so that month that I started my Facebook group, I did $30,000 of like cash money received in the bank. And I was like, whoa, this relationship thing kind of works.
And so let's just pause there for a second. So I'm sure people are wondering, well, wait a minute. What did you do in that Facebook group? How did you make $30,000? So can you break that down for a little bit for us? Like, what did you do for the group that you feel contributed to it working to really open your eyes there? I know you're talking about relationships, and just people are looking for those strategies of, okay, so I have a group, but what do I do with it? How do I operate it? How do I make money from it? So I'm curious if you can just dig into that a little bit for people. So
I actually when I started my group, I said to myself, my only focus for this first month is going to be on growing my group. If I'm going to stop doing anything else in my business that has not related to growing the group, that's my only point. So if my point is to grow the group, that means I have to create a space where people actually want to show up to. I'm going to have to have a reason to invite people to the group. I have to do that. So I would set myself like a 24-hour goal, 72-hour goal, 1 week goal, like numbers that I would want to get. And I was really committed to getting my first 500 members because I felt like that would be the benchmark of like having an engaged community, enough members coming in. So I made that as like my number one priority. And one of the things that I learned when I was in corporate was also always have something to invite people to, right? So I was always thinking like, well, what can I do? What am I going to invite people to? Okay, is this working? And so I was just focused on serving. And I know this sounds funny because sometimes there's like, and I don't agree with like, just give value and the people are going to buy that stuff. I don't believe that because we have to make offers and the sales don't happen on their own.
Yeah.
But when you do create a community and you focus on getting to know every single member and you're cultivating those relationships and you're listening to what people want and you're asking them questions and you're understanding them and you're finding out where they're getting stuck and what's making them tick and what's going on in their life, and you really, truly do care about them and they feel seen and heard, they're going to tune in and pay attention to what it is that you're going to share. And they're going to have a much deeper level of trust with you because they feel safe with you.
Sure.
And so creating that environment. Now I was selling private coaching at the time. So it was, I think my price point was about $5,000 at the time when I was doing that. So it's not huge volume and yeses to get to $30,000. It wasn't a low ticket offer, but it made it so that one yes would definitely lead me forward. And so I did a challenge, a 5-day challenge. And, I forgot to make an offer because I didn't like selling. And then so I did the 5-day challenge. I didn't even make an offer. And then someone actually reached out to me saying, hey, is there a way I can work with you? And I'm like, oh, geez, I didn't make an offer. I should do this again. So like right after I did another new challenge, I'm like, now I can actually make an offer and I'm going to invite people to come work with me because that's why I'm here. And so the sales came in on the back end of that first person on that first challenge that came out to me, which that was like, certainly not my doing. The second one came from me actually making offers, and the rest of the sales came in from me just having dialogue with the members in DMs and, if appropriate, making invitations for them to hop on a call with me.
All right. So I'm going to go a little deeper for people here. And I'm curious on how you approach this, which is they're going to think, okay, great. So you did a challenge, you got these sales. That's cool. Love it. All makes sense. And I like the intimacy, like building the relationships. We're all about that. We love storytelling and branding for the same reasons, like really connect with people, resonate. So when you're doing this, when you're approaching Facebook groups, which is getting more and more popular, what is the title of the group? What is the topic for the challenge? And then how does it tie into the offer? Like, is there synchronicity between these things that really made it work? Like that whole pre-framing them, setting them up to get the sale. Like, it's like you're coming in this group for this. I'm doing a challenge on this, and now it's going to make sense because you're ready to work with me. And that's what you're helping them with, right? You're helping them get ready to work with you.
Yes. So today, if I was training someone, I would definitely teach them to tie things together so that one thing is leading into the next from wisdom of realizing. But for me at the time, and I think the landscape changes, right? And so the online market space has gotten more sophisticated, which means that there's more people doing it, which means that we need to be more clear as to like where we're guiding people, because there is too much noise, and their time, their energy, their attention is being called in multiple different directions all the time. Yeah. So it's important that we're really specific and clear in bringing those people forward. Now, in the beginning, I'd love to say, that's how I had it figured out. But I was like, my group was called the Sassy Successful Entrepreneurs Facebook group. And at the time I was really focused on helping corporate women transition, because that's what I had done. And so I thought that felt aligned. And so I thought this is going to be this supportive place where I get to bring these other women that are kind of in that transition, be able to go through that experience. And so as I was going through, I think that one of my challenges, the first one was based on visibility. And I gave way too much information. I mean, I packed in probably like an 8-week course in 5 days, and I'm like, let's go. And everyone's like, whoa, drinking from the fire hose. I can't handle this. And I was like, that was too much. Okay, we get to learn. We get to learn from that. And then I did another one, because I actually did 3 challenges back to back over 6 weeks. So one was on visibility. One was on, I think, discovery calls, or getting discovery calls. I think it was about getting enrollment calls booked. So I was always thinking, what have I been able to do on something that I feel like I've gained on, that I can help support someone else? Right. And sometimes we get like lost in that, we have to be like 10 light years ahead of someone to be able to serve them. And it's like, no, if you've just been able to do something and accomplish something, like share the journey and bring other people along so they can learn from what you just learned. It's so fresh and for you. So, which is ultimately like a piece of what you coach, right? So it's like a small piece. Like if they work with you as a coach, like discovery, visibility, that's probably all part of what you would coach them with, right? Yeah, absolutely. So it was just like, a little piece. Now, today, we use pop-up groups, and today the group's called Grow Your Group, because that's specifically what we're doing.
Very straightforward. Yes.
There's a Grow Your Group training series, and there's a Leading a Kick-Ass Facebook group program. So everything is very specific and leading to that. And we rinse and repeat, and we get to do it over again. And that's very much the focus of it. But back then it was like, I was still figuring out, like, what do I want to talk about? Did that work? Did that not work? Did that land? Did I like teaching that? Did people respond?
That's interesting. Yeah. And, I think there's some people overdo this idea of like, yes, you have to give value, right? And the free value concept, right? I believe in giving over delivery for a paid offer. But when it comes to the free value, do you find that it's more overwhelming for people? Like you don't get into the hows of doing something. It's more about like, if you want to, let's say you're saying you want to be more successful and make money, you're going to teach them why they need visibility, why they need to discover people a certain way. So the whys and the whats and things like that. So what is your thoughts around how we position our approach to offering that free value?
So this is such a great concept and question. And you know, we're so often told, like, talk about the what and the why, and talk about the what and the why, and then go and give them the how when they actually invest with you. Yeah. And quite honestly, I've often struggled with like thinking, okay, how does that work? But what I've realized is this, because I've always been in the perspective, like I want to give as much and I want to support as people as much, but there's a difference between teaching a how and giving them a snippet of a how versus like having them drink from the fire hose and giving them so many hows that they don't even know what fits where and how it fits together. Right. And so I think that you want to have one core piece of something that is juicy on a how, that's building their belief with themselves that they can do it, that's giving them an answer to question that helps them see how it's possible for them, but it's not giving all of the things that they're going to have to do. And I think what's most important when we're going through challenges or campaigns or when you're with your content is helping people shift people's perspective to go from the struggling perspective of where things aren't working and the things that are standing in their way and the stories that they're telling themselves or the limitations that are showing up in their life, and versus like the possibility of what gets to get there. And if you can help them see why they're struggling and help them see why they haven't got the results and why they're not getting across there, and if you can articulate that to them, they're going to be totally sold on wanting to do business with you because they're going to feel like you get them. And that perspective shift is way more valuable than giving someone 5 steps to something.
Right. It is. And you know, it's not an easy thing, I think, for most people to figure out on how to do that. There's, I guess, certain ways of approaching that kind of content and stuff. So, you know, here you are, you got your 30,000 and, you know, so where'd you go from there to start? I guess, let's say now you have proof of concept, right? So it's like, how do we start scaling?
So I would love to say that was like the moment that everything just took off and scaled from there. But the next month, what happened? No, it's this part.
Doubled it.
I'm kidding. The next month, I got so in my head about, wow, like how did this happen so easily? Because I wasn't focused on the money. I wasn't focused on monetization. I was focused on serving and connecting and building those relationships. And I was like, whoa, like, could it really be that easy? Like, did I just make that much? And I got so much in my head about it that, you know, I don't know if anyone that's listening has had this experience where it feels like you just had this new win and then it feels like you go backwards like 10 steps. And so my second month in my Facebook group, again, I was selling one-to-one coaching. So I was doing enrollment calls. I had 17 no's in a row, 17 enrollment calls, and they all said no.
Interesting. So what do you think happened?
So I think it was definitely in my perspective and my thinking, right? I was very much in my head and in fear, and, you know, we create what we think. And so if we think that it's not, and so I started questioning my value and questioning, was this a fluke? And what if I get found out? And, you know, what if I can't do this again? And all of those things that are coming up, right? And then I remember when I shifted my perspective and I said to myself, because remember I was talking, staying one step ahead of your people, like so that you're teaching them along the journey. And I remember saying to myself, Christina, when you get to the other side of this, you're now going to be able to help your clients move through the challenges that come through as they go and experience this. Yeah. And so I get to go through this so that I can understand and feel their pain and understand the experience of going backwards and help them navigate through how to get to the other side. And just that shift in perspective, within a couple of days of shifting that perspective, I actually did, and I'd love to say it was tactical. I was doing the same things, but it was that shift in perspective that ended up getting a yes coming in and just rebuilding that confidence. And sometimes we get slapped down, knocked down, and our confidence gets, you know, it's like someone pops the confidence, pops our confidence, and we end up going flat. And so it was like that, just that shift in perspective, and also really taking a look at it, saying like, you know what, I'm fully committed to this no matter what. And so what, this happened, does it mean anything about me? Does it mean anything about anything else? Like, suck it up. pull up your big girl pants, take it seriously. And let's look at your business, your Facebook group as a business tool that you can use and get out of all of the other stuff that's not working. And let's just focus on what is and lead from that place.
Yeah, that doubt is a big matzo ball for people. Like you go through 17 calls in a row, and if you're not closing, the one thing that I've learned over the years is just you got to look at a bigger data set. It's like you're making decisions off these 17 calls is not a lot of calls. Like people do thousands of calls, you know what I mean? So like in a bigger perspective, if you had at least 30 to 50 calls and no one buys, you might say maybe my offer is no good, right? But you already had 5 proof of concept anyway. So yeah, I think I see, we coach some, entrepreneurs too. And it's like, I see that happen a lot. Well, I didn't have any sales this month. I'm like, all right, but what about the 6-month window? What's your close rate there? Like in an average, right? And it makes a big difference. Like, oh, well, I guess it is actually working, So it's a really great point that you made. And it does, I think you have that confidence pop, right? It hurts.
Yes, so, it hurts.
Yeah, it's not easy. So, okay. So, that's interesting. So that's what happened the next month. And I guess if you were a coach and you're getting like a $5,000 client, that means you're spending a fair amount of time working with somebody. How many people can you really take on at once? I think what people don't understand is how do you go from the all in like hands-on work where it takes a lot of your time. So time for money, almost kind of concept. And what's the business model look like to start scaling that kind of thing so that you could take yourself out of it more?
Yeah, great question. I mean, I think working one-on-one long-term is just going to lead to no time and a glorified job ultimately.
Pretty
right?
much, yeah.
So, but it's super valuable. It's a great place to start because you develop your process and you develop your skill set. And
I think you have to start there. It's like you have to like get in there and like do it before you can do anything else, really.
Definitely. I've always looked at it as like, it's like that stepping stone. And so for me, when I remember, as I was getting into thinking, okay, I want to leverage more of my time. And I started my very first program, and it was a group program. And I remember I thought, okay, how am I going to fill it? Right? How am I going to fill it? What am I going to do? And so I made this, and I remember and it's funny because we just grow so much, right? And just to give perspective, it took me 5 years to build a 7-figure company in the online space. And so this is the first, this is the beginning. This is early on. This is like the first year. And so I knew that I was wanting to sell this group coaching program. And I remember thinking to myself, I paid someone to set up this sales page on a website, and it was like a developer person that did it. I'm like, I have no idea what they're doing. And I paid this money. And I'm like, if I could just make the money back so that I'm not in the hole, I'm good. And I was working with the coach at the time, and she's like, Christina, come on. I'm like, well, I don't need to. I was in this conversation like, I don't want to charge, and I feel bad, and I'm just learning. And she says, okay, let's stretch a little bit. Like, what can we do here? And I said, okay, maybe, and I said, okay, I'd really like to have at least 5 people. And then she's like, okay, what would be a bigger stretch than that? And I'm like, 10 people. She's like, okay, let's focus on getting between 5 and 10 people into this group coaching program. And this, I don't know. So, okay, great. I'm going to focus on 5 to 10 people. I was so broad with my niche at the time. Like, I started this group, but I also was in these, I was in these different areas of niches in my in my physical environment. Like when I go to networking events and so on, I would do that. So I remember having all this idea that I was going to do this webinar, and I was going to convert all these people, and all the buyers were going to come in there. And I did this webinar, and nobody bought. And I was so bummed out, thinking like, ooh, but I said, okay, no, I'm committed to this. And so my very first program, I still laugh. I don't know how I managed to pull off people from all different sorts, but I had financial advisors in there. I had a photographer in there. I had an artist in there. I had a mortgage person in there, like the whole gamut of like different mix of people.
Interesting.
And I just remember thinking, well, I can help anyone. And so I just that first time is like, I just hustled through relationships, connection, outreach, talking to people to fill it. And it felt oh my gosh, at the end of it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is exhausting. And it took me a while to even get up the courage to go and do it again. And that particular program, used to be called 90 Days to Getting Booked and Getting Paid. And it was focused on helping new coaches get their first paying clients coming in and establishing their business.
Good offer.
But I just wasn't excited about it. And I just kind of shifted and adapted it. And then what happened, because I was growing in my Facebook group, people are seeing like, wow, like you're just seeing so much growth, so much engagement. Like, what is it that you're doing? Can you teach us what you're doing? I'm like, oh, that's what I can do. And that's really where it just felt so aligned, because it was how I'd had such massive breakthroughs. And so I started teaching people what I was doing in my Facebook group so they could do that. And that was kind of how it came about of creating my Facebook group program.
Yeah. And the hustle to do that was only because you were booking clients and trying to figure out how to do that for yourself, which led you to have a skill set that other people were interested in.
Exactly. And what I didn't even realize, you guys, was I was hustling to get these clients into this group coaching program. And what I didn't realize is like, okay, I was using challenges and they were converting effectively for me to sell my private coaching. So why would I not use the same process and sales system to be booking people into my group program? And then when I shifted that and used my challenge to sell, so just to give perspective, when I thought, okay, I'm going to teach this program, I sold 2 spots. Because I teach people I can do in the Facebook group. I sold 2 spots and it kind of bombed. And I was like, oh, 2 people in the group program, I'm going to look like a loser. And people are going to think like, why would I listen to you? And so I offered them a refund. I didn't have the heart to tell them why. I just said, oh, something changed. And they wouldn't take their money back. They said, no, Christina, I want you to help me. Like, I don't want my money back. I want your help. And so that's when I kind of regrouped and I had that aha of, well, why don't I use the same method that I was going to teach them, which I've been using inside of my group? Why don't I just do that and then lead into it? And so I did that. And I sold 20 spots into my very first program for the Facebook group. And I was like, oh, yes. Makes sense.
That's interesting. I love that. I mean, are you still doing any high ticket coaching yourself, or are you totally like hands off now doing this other thing?
I do have a high level group coaching program that I work with people, our VIP Cash Flow Accelerator program. It is on a leverage basis and we have coaches in there. And I usually will work with 3 maximum people privately, 1-to-1. And I'm very, very picky about who we have, and we tend to have a long wait list for people that want to come in, but I enjoy it for the right people and in very small doses because it is very time intensive.
Yeah. And how does just out of curiosity, I hear a lot of people doing group coaching and stuff like that. What can you give a little taste of how that operates? Like how does that is that like you meet monthly? Are you actually like teaching people anything, or is it just they're coming to questions on a topic? How does that flow for you?
So just as an example, like for our larger group coaching program, right, over a year, every 90 days is curriculum, that like an implementation plan. So there's very specific, here's what you're doing, here's how you do it. So the first 90 days, people focus on really building a decent, sizable audience base. And then for the next 9 months, we focus on their challenge launches and debriefing and going and doing it again and really reaching a level of mastery. So there's predictability, right? And knowing like, okay, by the end of the year is knowing that you've got a sales system dialed in that's converting predictably for you to take those leads into buyers. So we have the 3-month and then the 9-month. And then they get 2 group coaching calls, actually 3 now, 3 group coaching calls with me each month. They have 2 accountability calls with an accountability coach each week.
That's cool.
For the first 3 weeks of the month. They get copy reviews from a copywriter twice a month. They get tech calls every week from my team. So it's not somewhere I would start with that, but because the business has grown and the team has grown, I have the capacity to be able to bring in my team and resources to help serve people. But in the beginning, I would have started a group where I was the one serving them in the different aspects that I could that was aligned with me. And typically I would work with people, if I was doing a group coaching program, maybe I'd meet with them every week, and then they'd have the Facebook group for support. But so it's important to always start where you are, start simple, and you can always add on and scale from there.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's good advice for people is, don't feel like because you're at a different level. So it's like the people are like, oh, I got to do all this stuff. And it's like, they get into it and I'm like, no, dude, like you need to start small. So I'm glad you said that. So,
very much so.
What's that?
Very much so. Yes. You've got to start small.
Yeah. I mean,
simple.
and it grows, right? So when you see that you're getting more clients, that things are working, you can continue to, I guess, expand on adding the extra benefits to people and stuff like that. That's interesting. So it's like a year-long program, I guess.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty cool. And so now the Facebook stuff that you teach, that's like a course.
Yeah, it's more like a course. So it's like 8 weeks, start to finish. Every week has a module, and then coaching support to be able to go through.
You got the trifecta. You got the high ticket coaching, you got the group mastermind basically, and then you got the course.
Yeah, you got it.
Love it. Yeah, I like that. That's a great model too, because it's also a good, it's good as the founder and entrepreneur to go through that process, right? And then also for the people who start maybe in the Facebook course, and if they want to get then in the mastermind and work their way up that ladder as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing to look at is I remember Clay Collins from Lead Pages. This is something that really
I do know. I remember when he first started Lead Pages.
Yeah, and something that he said that really landed with me is his 5x1 model, and it was like the fastest way to build $1 million business. And he was talking about having one target market, one offer, right, one sales system, one core source of traffic over 1 year. And if you do that over a year and you just focus on those 5 ones for a year, you're going to end up way further ahead than if you're trying to dabble into multiples of those on all of those platforms as you go.
Right. But would you consider, like when you started, you were doing hands-on like coaching, $5,000 a head, that would be one offer, but to scale that to 7 figures, you'd be a very busy bee.
You would, yes. So 100%. And so I think I look at it from this perspective when you're growing and you're scaling, you're starting from the beginning, you're doing private coaching, right? If you want to get to $1 million business and you're charging, 100,000 per person or 50,000 per person, like you're charging a significant higher amount of money if you're going to want to hit that number and be able to manage it. Yeah. And so you have to be asking yourself, is the value there to be able to create that? But I look at when you're starting with private coaching, you're creating cash flow that funds your ability to be able to start building out the leverage component. Yeah. So I almost look at it as like the private coaching in the beginning is almost like a job. It's like, okay, I'm putting in this time. I'm getting paid decently for the time that I'm putting in this. And what it's doing is it's giving me the space and freedom to now spend the rest of my time to master my marketing and sales and to build out that leverage offer so that I have the capacity to be able to grow. So I kind of look at it from the perspective, it's like it's feeding your freedom and it's letting you eat, pay your bills. So that you can develop, because what most people don't realize is if you are selling a low ticket course, then you have to have another income source to be able to fund yourself as you grow, because it's just not going to happen.
Tough. No, it's tough. And you're going to be trying to I see everybody wants to jump right into Facebook ads. So sexy. I'm like, if you're not selling 10, 20 grand organically, you should not be doing Facebook ads, right? Man. Yeah, that's always a place that people want to jump right into. And it's usually too early. Timing is everything.
So true. Yes.
Yeah. So, we'll wrap up here in a minute. I know you got some things you got to get to shortly. So one thing I think is really interesting and important, and I know you've tackled this because I can hear what you've been saying, is how we think, right? The mindset, which is, that is like all the business strategy in the world is great. And, you can have all those skills, but if you can't get out of your own way, like I'm big, like I love every morning and every night I read certain affirmations. You know what it is? It's more like yes, you are reprogramming in a sense, but it's to remind yourself. Like I can't remember what I watched last night on TV, let alone these important changes I'm trying to make. Right. So if you're not reminding yourself all the time, so I'm curious, like what were some of the major barriers that you found that you had to kind of like to become the next version of Christina, like what did you find was the biggest challenges for you?
Oh my gosh, there's been so many. And the funny thing is, when I first started, I was like, mindset, I don't need mindset. Why do I need mindset? Just give me the
Everyone
strategy.
thinks.
Just give me the strategy.
Give me that foo-foo crap.
But here's the thing, right? When we're taking a look at, we're taking a look at strategy, right? Is that strategy, the way we see something is what we create, right? The way you look at business is the way that you're going to experience business. And so if you look at business as hard, it's going to be hard. If you look at it that it's going to take a long time to get to where you want to go, it's going to take a long time to get to where you want to go. If you look at, right, like if you look at money being easy to make, you're going to find that money is going to come in easily to you. And so, and I know that I think the biggest massive breakthrough shift that I had in my perspective and thinking was taking 100% responsibility. And what that meant was, in the beginning, I always hoped that a mentor or someone would like scoop me up and demonstrate like their belief in me, or that would show me the way. And they would introduce me to the right person. They would deem me worthy. They would, elevate me to the status that I wanted to be. They'd have all the right answers. They'd tell me about the right offer. They tell me the right way to do something. And if I just listen to them, then I'm going to be able to get the result. And then what would happen was I didn't get the result. And then I would think that, well, maybe they weren't the right person, or that wasn't the right program, or it wasn't the right coach. And I was constantly looking at, okay, well, maybe I need something else. Maybe I need something else. And I'd have like all of these, half-built bridges to get to where I want to go. And then I'd be like, oh, that didn't work. And then start a new one, right? Oh, like, you hear all this things all the time. Oh, maybe I should have Instagram. You start doing Instagram, didn't work. Okay, start a new thing. Maybe I need to have Facebook, and I start Facebook, and then I can do that. Maybe I need to have a podcast. And you have all these people that are starting these new things all the way over, and they're never giving themselves the opportunity to get to the finish line. And it's because they're not taking responsibility, because let's face it, there's other people that are massively succeeding in any of those strategies to get the results. And starting a new one is not going to create the result unless you're doing something out of order, which sometimes can be the case. But for the most part, it's really taking a look, okay, if I'm trying 5 different things and they're not working, what's the common denominator here? Yeah. And sometimes it's hard to really look at that and say, whoa, like maybe it's me. And it's not about assigning blame or feeling bad about it, because the way you treat yourself in the breakdown is more important than anything. But it's taking a look at, okay, it's the way that I look at it. And if my beliefs, my expectations are creating the results that I want, then that means I have the power to change that and adapt what I think so that I can create what it is that I want. And so we can't blame other people or expect other people to save us. We've got to take 100% ownership. And that's when you have that level of commitment and intent that no matter what, you will create that outcome that you're going to go after. And that's when you start building trust with yourself. And oftentimes it starts small, right? It starts small with just doing that like one thing. And then you start to build trust with yourself and say like, okay, I can do this. And, it grows and it gets a little bit more. And so 100% responsibility, 100% of the time means that no one's to blame, because the complainers, they all stick together and they all fail and flop and bomb. And all of the leaders, if you look at this, if you're at any group program, all the leaders, the ones that are rocking it, the ones that are like making massive waves, they're like stepping into the driver's seat. They're not waiting for someone to save them or fix them or tell them the way. They're running with it, and they're open, they're coachable, they're getting support, but they have that level of commitment of what it is that they're stepping into. So 100% responsibility lets us really just take a look. Okay, if what I'm seeing and experience right now is not what I want, then what do I need to change within me to be able to change that? Because the perfect tactic is not going to fix what you're not aligned to creating.
Yeah, no, I appreciate everything you just said. And it's really, I think it's one of those things that a lot of people are late to the party to realize, but as soon as they go bankrupt or their bank account's down to that last dollar, they're going, I know I'm smart. I was great in corporate. I did all this stuff, but why isn't this working? And you start saying the only last place to look is right there, right? And then they finally will start doing what they need to do. But you're right. Like we kind of touched on it earlier, like doing things at the right time is important. And I hear a lot of people, well, I want to run this kind of business. So I'm just going to start a course. I'm going to make something up. I read a couple books. I'm just going to sell it. I'm like, yeah. And you can spend $1 million trying to figure out how to sell that thing, right? Or you can go in the right order and do it for people first, like we've been talking about, learn. And I think a lot of people don't want to go through those processes. It's too daunting to them, you know?
It is daunting. And the other thing that, no one ever tells us when we get into the space is that it's going to be the best personal development that you've ever done. And it's like building a business and being a parent too, my dad. You stick them together is probably the best, like personal development on steroids. Yeah. Because you're forced to look at yourself a lot and have to move through stuff. And part of that, I know it might sound strange to some, but part of that is actually healing old stories and old wounds and old things that you've experienced that have given you the belief system that you have. And that it's not fun to go through, but if you don't go through that, you're just going to keep creating the same thing over and over and over again.
Same paradigm, stuck. Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's really true. And you're right. I mean, people get stuck in those loops, and I see it all. And the more you go through this as an entrepreneur, like you start seeing it with other people, like, oh man, you do the same thing all the time. And it makes more sense too when you dive into it. The other nice thing too about starting in the right order with these services and stuff is you learn how to sell. And once 100%. You learn how to sell, then you're never going to go hungry. Like you can always get a client or two, pay the bills, do what you got to do. And then it's just a matter of like scaling and figuring out the other stuff. But if you can get on the ground level and learn to sell, you're in good shape.
Yes. I mean, it's when you look at that, it's like, I think there's two skill sets they need to master in business, right? Marketing, which is attraction, building an audience, and selling. And when you have those two mastered, no one can ever take that away from you. You're indispensable and you can create anything that you want. And that's why oftentimes when people start businesses, I always say, start with where you're most confident, because you developing the skill set in an area that you're most confident, you can carry over to something else. So when I first started, I was, working with financial advisors, and I was going through these different steps, but it's like, that's what I knew. And I was like, okay, I could feel confident there. And then I could develop my skill set in marketing and sales so then I can carry it over to where it is that I want to go. But if you're not feeling confident about what you're selling or what you're speaking into, and then you hope that your passion project is going to be the thing to get there, then it's going to take you a little longer to get there.
A lot longer.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to wrap up, but I do have one more thing if you have a minute. Mm-hmm. So we talked a lot about your latest, offer, which is really growing these Facebook groups and learning how to sell to these guys, which is just a great process. Can you tease the audience a little bit with a couple ideas of, well, how do I start building a Facebook group? Is there anything that we could test out on our own just to kind of get a little flavor of that?
Yeah. I mean, I think that there's multiple different ways of growing your group. And I've got a little gift for you guys that'll help you with more tactical things that you can share. And I think that with starting your group, you want to be thinking about, okay, what's in it for them? Like, why are they going to want to join? And if it's a post or a PDF or a checklist that you would do like as a lead magnet to get people on your list, as an example, you can have the same for your Facebook group. So giving them a reason for them to join. You're going to do a training. You're going to give them a little cheat sheet. You're going to give them something. And then once you've got that, now you got to tell people about it, right? It's like no use of being the best kept secret. So what I do have for you guys is a Grow Your Group bundle. This is something that we actually sell, and I'm gifting it to you guys. And what's included in that is the perfect naming blueprint. So it's how to come up with that perfect name for your Facebook group, so your people know, like, yes, this is for me. Yeah. It also has how to create your perfect intro post. So how to introduce yourself to the members in your group in a way that builds credibility, but also relatability. And then the third piece is a 5-step mini course on how to grow your Facebook group. So you'll get like tangible, actionable steps that you can apply right away.
Sweet. Okay. So how would anybody listening get their hands on this very special gift?
So you can go to deliveryourgenius.com/Adam and you can pick that up. So deliveryourgenius.com/Adam.
Okay, so your basic domain with my name in it. So we'll add that in the show notes and stuff like that when we get live. Everybody can grab it. And if you hear this before it's on our website, you can grab it as soon as you hear it. And then obviously, if you want to learn more about Christina, work with her, get into her programs, obviously she knows what she's doing. And you guys can check that out at deliveryourgenius.com.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Adam.
No, I appreciate it. It was a fun conversation. And we'll stay in touch.
Sounds good.
Thanks for tuning into the Change Creator Podcast. Visit us at changecreator.com/go big to get access to free downloads and other great resources that will drive your business forward.